when new agents imagine their real estate career, they often picture the moment they close on their first deal, the first commission check, the first client success story, that moment when everything finally feels real. But what most people don't realize is that the first deal isn't really the hardest part of this business. The first 10 deals are where the real learning happens. Those early transactions teach you more about real estate than any licensing class ever could. They teach you how to talk to people. They teach you how to solve problems. They teach you how to slow down and pay attention to details. And sometimes they teach you lessons that'll make your stomach drop. I still remember one of those early lessons very clearly. Early in my career, writing a listing, I'm going to take you back to the Stone Ages, basically. We used to have to write our own listing descriptions, and it used to take me forever. Back then, we didn't have AI helping us. You sat down and you wrote every word yourself and tried to make that home sound as appealing as possible. So one time I wrote a description for a listing, and I mentioned that the yard was fully sprinkled, except it wasn't. The owner watered the yard manually. I have to tell you, this yard was green, green, green. I could not believe that he watered it. We live in Texas. Now, imagine if someone had purchased that house believing there was an irrigation system because I advertised it that way. I could have been responsible for installing one. And at that time, the cost of the sprinkler system would have been more than the commission I was making on the home. That's the kind of mistake that'll make your heart stop. But it also teaches you something incredibly important. Slow down, pay attention to details, and never assume something about a property unless you've confirmed it. Those early deals force you to grow up in this business very quickly. And that's why the first 10 deals matter so much. Those first 10 transactions are where you really learn the craft. The first deal teaches you how important the paperwork is. You realize quickly that every word in a contract matters. You double check things, you triple check things. You start developing the habit of slowing down and reading carefully. By the second or third deal, you begin to understand just how emotional this process can be for people. Buying or selling a home is one of the biggest financial decisions most people will ever make. There's excitement, there are nerves, sometimes there are disagreements. Remind me on another time to tell you about the laundry room rule, and some of my clients will giggle when they hear that. And you begin learning that your job isn't just writing contracts. Your job is helping people navigate a very emotional process. By the fourth or fifth deal, inspections start teaching you some big lessons. Something always shows up on an inspection report. Sometimes it's minor, sometimes it's major, and you start learning how negotiations really work. Honestly, negotiating the offer price is one of the easier parts. It's those darn repairs. Even to this day, I have some very seasoned agents in my office that just strongly dislike negotiating repairs. You learn how to keep a deal together when stress starts building. By the time you reach 6 through 10 deals, something interesting starts happening. You begin seeing patterns. You begin developing systems. You learn how to communicate better with lenders, inspectors, title companies, and clients. And the chaos that you felt at the beginning slowly starts turning into confidence. That's why those first 10 deals are so important. They build the foundation for the rest of your career. Another lesson I learned early on is where deals actually come from. If you ask 10 agents how they generate business, you're probably going to get 10 different answers. But in my experience, the first deals most agents close come from a combination of relationships, conversations, and simply being in the right place at the right time because you've worked hard to be in that place. Let me give you a real example. One afternoon, I was holding an open house. A gentleman walked in and started looking around, so we began talking. And during the conversation, he mentioned that he was looking for a 5-bedroom house. The house I was hosting wasn't a 5-bedroom, But because I knew the market in that area so well, I immediately thought of a builder nearby who had inventory homes that might fit his bill. So I picked up the phone and called the builder rep. I told them I had a buyer looking for a 5-bedroom and asked if they had anything available, and ding, 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 they did. So I sent the buyer over to the model home. When I finished the open house later that day, I drove over to the builder's model just to check in, and when I walked in, the contract was already being written. 45 days later, I received a commission check. Now, I wish every deal in real estate happened that easy, but that moment didn't happen because of luck. It happened because I was there, I was listening, I knew the market, and I acted quickly to solve the buyer's problem. The more you know your market, the more valuable you become to people. Another huge source of business for me over the years has been networking, specifically the Saxe Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber has truly been the gift that continues to give. Over the years, I have received dozens of leads from relationships I built there, from my banker to the local storage owner to my financial planner. But those relationships didn't happen overnight. They were built over time, and they were built on trust. I trust these people with my business and my friendships, and they trust me with theirs. That kind of trust only comes from real conversations, which leads to one of the most powerful communication skills you can develop in real estate. It's going 3 questions deep. People love talking about themselves, especially when someone is genuinely interested in what they're saying. So imagine you're hosting an open house and someone walks in. You ask what brings them out today, and they say they're just looking. Many agents stop right there. But if you go 1 question deep, the conversation opens up. You might ask if they're local or relocating. Maybe they say they're relocating. Now you go another question deeper. What brought you to this area? Suddenly, you're not having a surface level conversation anymore. You're building a relationship, and relationships are where real estate business actually comes from. Now let's talk about something every real estate agent experiences sooner or later, and that's feast or famine. There are 2 reasons this happens. The first is inconsistency. When agents get busy, they stop prospecting, they stop marketing, they stop having conversations, and a few months later, the pipeline dries up. The second reason is seasonality. Real estate is not equally busy throughout the entire year. In most markets, November through February tends to slow down. Buyers are focused on holidays. Weather becomes a factor. The market naturally cools down. That's why budgeting becomes so important in this business. And it's also why I like to double down on my marketing efforts during that slower season. Because the agents who stay visible during the slow months are often the ones who benefit the most when the market heats back up again. I personally went through about 3 years of peaks and valleys before I fully understood this lesson. 3 years of ups and downs, and eventually I realized something very simple. I absolutely had to become consistent with my efforts, and if I couldn't stay consistent on my own, then I needed to hire people who could help me maintain that consistency. I also became a much better budgeter. Because when you plan financially for the lean months, those slower seasons stop feeling quite so scary. Now I want to talk about something that almost every new agent experiences, but very few people talk about openly, and that's fear. New agents are often afraid of saying the wrong thing. They worry about sounding inexperienced. They worry about giving incorrect information. They worry about bugging people or sounding too salesy. But the fear goes deeper than that. Many agents are afraid of filling out forms incorrectly. You do need to be worried about that. They worry about missing something in a contract. You do need to worry about that. They worry about overlooking a disclosure. You need to worry about that. They worry about making a mistake that could cost their client money. You do need to worry about that. These fears are absolutely understandable. Real estate transactions involve a lot of details, but here's the truth that experienced agents eventually learn. Your job is not to know everything. Your job is to know how to find the answer. You have brokers, you have mentors, you have title companies, you have lenders, you have inspectors, you have experts in insurance. There's an expert on every corner for everything that we need. You have resources all around you. And when you slow down, ask questions, verify information, you dramatically reduce the chances of making serious mistakes. Confidence in real estate doesn't come from pretending you know everything. It comes from learning how to solve problems. And every transaction you complete builds that confidence. Another interesting milestone in every agent's career is the first closing. Most new agents imagine that closing day will feel like a huge celebration. But the truth is, closing is often a little anticlimactic. Anticlimactic, yes, I can say that word. You've spent 30 to 45 days putting together the deal, managing inspections, handling negotiations, making sure the paperwork is correct, babysitting the entire transaction, and then suddenly closing day arrives. You sit with your clients, you sign the paperwork, the keys change hands, and before you know it, it's over. And you walk out thinking, okay, time to go find the next deal. But over time, you realize something important. Closing day is not the end of the relationship. It's just another step in it, because there is nothing that feels as good as getting a call from the same client 5 years later. Maybe they need a bigger home. Maybe they're downsizing. Maybe they're relocating. Whatever the situation, they call you again because they trust you. This is the real thrill in this business, helping people again and again throughout their lives, watching their kids grow up. It's wonderful. So here's a question I want you to think about for a moment. How many real estate conversations did you have last week? Conversations, not emails, not social media posts, actual conversations. Because those conversations are what eventually turn into your first 10 deals. And those first 10 deals are what transform you from a brand new agent into a real estate professional. Real estate is ultimately a relationship business. Trust is everything. And trust is built when people see that you care, you listen, and you consistently show up to help them solve problems. The agents who succeed in this business aren't usually the ones who know the most on day one. They're the ones who stay in the game long enough to learn. And those first 10 deals are where that learning really begins.